Welcome to Talking Trade. I'm Sandi Siegel, president of MEJ.
And I'm Ian Coxhead, University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And I am super happy today to introduce and welcome a friend and a colleague of many years, Pradeep Nedungadi, a fellow board member of Milwaukee World Trade and various trade councils, Madison and so forth. So we seem to cross paths often. Haven't seen you in quite a while, Pradeep, so it's really nice to have you on the show. Pradeep is president of Visthar, assisting U.S. businesses in exploring and developing business opportunities in India, and a consultant for India and doing trade there, setting up distribution and so forth. So I know I've had the pleasure of referring numerous clients to you and consider you the guru of India. So tell us, Pradeep, what is the landscape in today's environment of U.S.-India trade and business connections?
Well, thank you, Sandi. Thanks, Ian, and I appreciate WisPolitics giving me this opportunity to talk about a kind of a hot topic, I would say, in the world of trade. So, yeah, the landscape right now in the last, I would say, year and a half to 2 years has been very positive. Quick background, India has been familiar with doing business with the Western world for about 300 years, whether you call it business or barter or trade or whatever it is, because the British were in India, and even before that, Western powers ruled India for many years. It's a shame. It's a shame that the US is just discovering India as a manufacturing option and even as a trading partner in non-manufacturing businesses only in the last maybe 30 years. And there are very strong reasons for that. They are the two largest democracies in the world, functioning democracies, different style of democracy, one pattern, India pattern after the British form of democracy. Not a two-party system, but I say a 200-party system. But India has been a manufacturing hub for a long time, but it has been a manufacturing power in the sense that it was entirely focused on domestic consumption. When I was growing up in India, a lot of products and components and parts were being made, including automotive. India has had automotive manufacturing for, I would say, at least 60, 70 years, maybe longer, started by the British, but it was all focused on the domestic market. So it's only now that the US is looking at India, and it doesn't get much publicity, and I understand why. India doesn't promote itself. Unlike China, which is a natural comparison, China grew its economy with a very heavy focus on exports. India has not done that. It has always been based on domestic consumption. So now that the global automotive industry has entered India in the last 30 years, with largely Japanese companies, but some US companies and European companies, everything that follows automotive is also developed to world-class standards. And so now it is available to the Western world for products, parts, and components. So the landscape is looking good. And I think we will talk about that soon in terms of what's happened post the last 3 years in terms of post-China and COVID and all.
Absolutely, Pradeep. Yeah, and I do have fond memories of tooling around southern India in an Ambassador automobile, which I grew up with in New Zealand. It was called a Morris Oxford back then.
Yes.
So the last 2 years, the US-China trade war has reshaped a lot of bilateral trade relationships. Has trade diversion from China been beneficial to Indian exporters, especially in manufacturing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it getting the slice of the pie that it should be getting? No. And I would blame, if it was a question of blame, but India has a large role to play in that. It has not promoted itself. You will never see it mentioned in articles alongside Vietnam and other low-cost countries. Again, partly because I think of its being largely focused on domestic supply to domestic manufacturers and OEMs. But I would say the second and third generation of these gems of private companies that were started maybe in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, many of those third generation, fourth generation young people were educated in the US or in Australia or in Europe, and they are now expanding their reach to be able to participate in the global manufacturing economy. So it's not just in terms of wanting to do business, but also updating their competencies, their own internal infrastructures, their factories, the machinery, their processes. As I said, the automotive industry, as you know, in all the countries that it has been big, like US, Germany, small in Australia, Japan, Korea, now China, the automotive industry drives a lot of excellence in manufacturing and practices and procedures. So, ISO 9000, all those standards and practices that were launched. Unfortunately, Deming had to go to Japan to be listened to or heard, but those are now universal across OEMs, but definitely also strong in tier ones and even getting into tier twos. So,
if I may interrupt, Pradeep, so are we seeing US importers of automotive parts and components switching supply from China to India? Is that really happening?
I mean, our business, Visthar, is directly in that space. We don't directly sell to or represent our manufacturers in India to automotive OEMs, but to tier ones and also to off-highway equipment and product manufacturers like tractors, lawnmowers, snowblowers, ATVs, UTVs, etc.
Yep.
A significant part of our clients are in the Midwest, with quite a few in Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin, southeast, southwest Wisconsin, and in Illinois and Iowa. So the big players in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin in the ag space and in mining and various complex machineries. So they are our clients, and we are supplying parts, components, sub-assemblies from India to these companies.
Terrific. Pradeep, that's really promising and very interesting to hear your perspective on the next culture and generation. And certainly everyone's been pushed to diversify supply chains, particularly now with some of the challenges we're having out of Asia. So what do you think the future holds, opportunities, constraints? How badly, does GSP renewal or not getting renewed impact you? And, do you still, are you still encouraged for future growth?
Absolutely. I have to bet on that for my own business.
Right.
But I have to say, in the last 2 years, our business has doubled, and we're expecting it to double from 2021 to 2022. And our goal then is to, now it's from a smaller base, but as the base grows higher, we're still maintaining that growth, and our targets are to triple. And when I say triple, it's not so much my business as much it's an extension of our suppliers' export from India to the US. That directly then impacts our business. So we're expecting it to triple from 2022 to 2025. So it's significant, and we're setting ourselves some lofty goals, but we have transferred those goals to our suppliers in India. I also, before I forget, want to say that India presents a very good opportunity for Wisconsin companies in exports, because of our strength in agriculture and agriculture-related technologies, equipment, machinery, food processing, technologies, equipment, machinery, and products. So I have got inquiries from India that I've passed on, sometimes to the Department of Ag, and every once in a while I'll hear from Madison also in terms of helping them identify potential companies. There are with a population of 1.2 billion, you can imagine. And, food products is the core, right? Foods and pharmaceuticals. So there is a huge audience, and India has to be more productive and efficient in delivering food products to its end users. So all the way from packaging and food production and storage, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure you're seeing it, Sandi, in your business in terms of the movement of products in and out.
Yes,
right.
No, and I certainly, if GSP is renewed, which we're hopeful will happen, all the more enticing versus significantly high duties out of China and elsewhere. So it's very promising, very interesting to hear.
Now that's an interesting segue, because I tell the people in India, if you want to be, that's their aspiration, right? Their economy is now 5th largest in the world. They want to get to be the 3rd. It'll be US, China, India, and a lot of predictions. All the reports that come out by 2030, 2035, that's what it's going to be. In the, not just the overall GDP and economy, but even in manufacturing, India is threatening to enter the top 10, et cetera. Now, I tell the people in India, you can't be a big boy and then have your hand out for dole too. So, so they should compete without GSP, preferential treatment, etc. I understand preferential treatment for protected, like, handicrafts and textiles and garments and stuff like that, but not for, and we don't see that today. India pays a duty. It's not a tariff. There doesn't seem to be across the board tariff, but they pay duties based on each HTS classification. I think the political constraints will remain when you have two large countries and two powers, political powers. There's going to be always have to be a give and take. It's not going to be easy. But the one encouraging thing is trade talks have been very active. US now, post 9/11, sees India as a watchdog and an ally in that part of the world. I've heard that India, after Japan, is the second largest country in terms of joint military exercises in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean with the US. So there's a lot of mutual needs to work with each other. My advice for US companies is don't go to India with a US lens and drive on the highway and say, oh my God, there are potholes. Oh my God.
Right. And what do I do about the cows?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let the locals do what they do well. And if you find the right partners, the right suppliers, the right distributors to sell your products, they will figure out how to tackle India. We're not the experts on doing business on the ground. But that's the key, finding the right partner and leaving it to the experts. And that's where you come in too, Sandy. You will recommend the best partners in India for freight movement.
Right. Likewise.
Oh,
That's
Pradeep.
great insight, Pradeep. Thank you. I look forward to seeing if your predictions of growth are come true and having you back on.
Are you going to audit me?
Well, no, I'm just going to check in. I make my own predictions.
Good.
Thank you for joining us today. Really great insight on what's going on in India and really promising.
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep.
Thank you very much again. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Andy.
We'll see you again on a future episode of Talking Trade. That's what this show has been, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night, all.